Welcome back everyone. I've got an interesting little video for you today, and it's going to be all about the yellow belly gene, which is kind of one of the most common genes in the hobby, but also one of the most fun and kind of one of the most useful as well. Obviously, before I get too far into it, I'm going to introduce my co-host for the day, which is Spirit. And Spirit is a fire ivory ball python. So ivory, as I'll explain in a while, is the homozygous, I suppose, or super form of yellow belly. I couldn't remember the word for a second. But anyway, before we do look at some examples and talk about breeding it, I just wanted to explain that yellow belly is a kind of what we refer to as an enhancer gene in the hobby. So much like pastel, it kind of brightens colours. It tends to brighten yellows really well. But it kind of goes further than this. When you breed it into combinations with other genes, it also tends to sort of add contrast. It makes the colours and the patterns look sharper quite often. You see that contrast between blacks and yellows improve when yellow belly is in the mix, and I will show you some examples in a moment. But first of all, the reason why Spirit doesn't look like heterozygous or single copy non-super yellow bellies is that yellow belly is what we call what people used to call co-dom, but we now call incomplete dominant. It's an incomplete dominant trait, and it only achieves, so in a single copy we say it's incomplete dominant and it looks like a classic yellow belly, which I will show you an example so you can ID them yourselves. But then when you have two copies of a gene, and when it's homozygous, that's when you have this super form, and it really looks a lot like a type of albinism, or leucism, I suppose is the word, and it looks completely different. So that's one cool aspect of it to start with, and it's kind of one of the other things that makes it fun. Although I will admit at this point that is a double-edged sword as well. So it's great to have lots of yellow belly in your collection, but if you do breed two yellow bellies together, you might end up getting an ivory, and just an ivory without fire in, for example, would just look like Spirit but without these freckles. And sometimes if you get an ivory and there's other genes in the mix, it's hard to identify them, and there's also not much point doing an ivory clown or something like that, for example, because it masks things so completely. So that's kind of, ivory is one of the cool things you can do with it, but the fact that it is an enhancer is probably why it's in so many people's collections and so many combos, because it just makes them look really, really, really good. So that's kind of my basic rundown of why it's good to have around, and why lots of people have this expression where they say you can't have too much yellow belly. I also wanted to say on a small footnote here that I don't know if anyone else has noticed this or if it's just my bunch or what, but I've just noticed that so many yellow bellies are extremely placid and extremely good feeders. Even just right from the start, they start feeding really well, often before the other hatchlings. Now, I don't know if that's, like I said, just me, but I would love to hear from other people who have bred the gene and keep the gene. But anyway, that said, I'm going to show you some of my favourite yellow belly combinations from my projects this year in a moment. And then we're going to go over to Morph Market and do what I call, I kind of think it's torture, basically looking at some breeders who have some really cool yellow belly morphs that show you just what you can do with just yellow belly and literally one or two other genes. Breeders I'm really jealous of because they've made some cool stuff, and I haven't made it yet, but we'll take a look and give them due props. So let's head over and look at my combos first. So first of all, we need to compare a yellow belly to a normal, which is easier said than done. Anyway, we've got a normal baby here. She is het for clown, so she's a bit brighter. She's a little bit more interesting looking, but you can see that there's a kind of an overall pattern that is a normal for any ball python. Now, even though they don't want to cooperate, let's have a look at a yellow belly. Straight away you can see that there's something going on with the pattern on her head, but also the pattern down the flanks is just slightly darker, slightly blotchier, and there's this kind of background mottly bit to this kind of the bottom of the saddles. Other than that, you can't really see a huge amount of difference. If you put them side by side again, look at the normal. It's like a light difference in tone between the two of them. You can just see a slight difference there in coloration, and it's really not, it's not huge. Obviously they don't want to cooperate because it's a video, but you can tell there's something going on, but it doesn't look huge. And obviously the part we're interested in is, of course, the belly. That is what a yellow belly looks like. And obviously, in this case, not yellow. There's some nice patterning, and it just looks a bit like a funky normal, with a cool bit of pattern on the side of the head. And occasionally you get these more unusual blotches on the neck. So really, in this instance, it doesn't look massively different to its friend there in front, which is normal. So it doesn't look like a huge difference, and you could be forgiven for thinking that it isn't something particularly special. So where yellow belly gets interesting is in combos. So you've got its super form, which is what Spirit was, the ivory I showed you earlier. So the homozygous form, I guess you could call it. And that's pretty cool. But you've also got just simple combos like this little guy who's pastel yellow belly, and he's kind of like a regular pastel, but he's kind of lighter and brighter, and there's a little bit of difference in the saddles down the side of his body. And overall, you do see why it's called an enhancer gene. You get this overall kind of just slightly more contrasted, brighter animal than you would get with just a pure pastel. And I think just getting really pastel in any combination gets you a similar result. So I mean, it's always a good idea. I mean, just looking at that guy, you can see on top of his head how light he is, how pretty. He's going to grow and mature and look better than a regular pastel, purely because he's got the yellow belly gene in there. I know this isn't an exceptional new morph or anything like that, but I thought it was something cool to show you, just to see why yellow belly is kind of important. Now the final one I want to show you is, I think, my best baby of the year, even though I'm proud of all of them. But this is what happens when you get yellow belly into a nice combination morph. So this is a yellow belly firefly acid. So yellow belly, pastel, fire, and acid. And I've seen this without yellow belly, just a firefly acid. And it's nice. But when you add in the yellow belly, it really makes everything stand out. I mean, look at the contrast on the neck, contrast on the flanks, the face, the whitish top of the head. Everything is being enhanced by the yellow belly. Even the belly of this snake has yellow down the sides. And the way it just helps all the genes interact, you really see why it has that enhancing effect. So any nice combination morph you're trying to make, you just add in yellow belly and it's better. I mean, this is an exceptional looking snake, and I like all the genes in it. I mean, acid is amazing no matter what you do with it, but I genuinely think it's yellow belly that makes this snake stand out. Okay, so now we're back on Morph Market, back in the office, and the first baby I want to show you is by a breeder named Lazy Wolf Reptiles. So Lazy Wolf Reptiles, I hope you don't mind me using your image. And the snake is a highway. Now a highway, all it is yellow belly and gravel. Put them together and you get this amazing effect where you've got a reasonably dark snake, but with some nice light colours on the flanks. But you've got this cool yellow striping down the back. It's an intermittent stripe all the way from the neck to the tail. And I mean, gravel is a cheap gene as well. You can buy that, and yellow belly is, exceptionally cheap. And this is just a cool project that you can do for one of your first breeding projects, and they sell well. So that's really something to think about. The second one I wanted to show you was this one, which I think is an absolutely stunning example, by Bob's Bulls in McDonough, Georgia. And again, Bob, I hope you don't mind me using the photo, but I'm giving you all the due credit for creating something incredible. And this freeway ball python is kind of like the highway, but instead of with gravel, it's just with asphalt. It's literally just one copy of Yellow Belly, one copy of asphalt. You know, these are both $30, $40, $50 morphs, and it creates something incredibly cool looking like that. Again, you can do that for your first breeding project, and they will sell because they're just exceptional looking animals. I think, personally, I like the freeway combination slightly more than highway, but you can do good things with either, so they're both worth looking at. Now finally, the last one I wanted to show you was the Mardi Gras ball python, which is really cool. This is a asphalt Enchi yellow belly. So it's literally just the freeway with Enchi added in. And Enchi, you'll notice that there's this nice light red coloration going on, or light orange on the flanks, and it's just a brighter animal all over. And you'll notice that with Enchi, some combinations you add Enchi in and it gives a lighter reddish hue, which is really cool. And amazingly, you know, Enchi usually has a big influence on pattern, but in the Mardi Gras you can use Enchi and it still doesn't stop that nice striping down the dorsum or the back of the animal. So I mean, Mardi Gras is a really cool combination, and looking at the morphs involved, they're quite cheap, so that's not something that would be too hard to achieve for one of your first ball python projects. So there you have it. The yellow belly gene, which I've literally seen for £30 or, you know, $40 US, is just one of the most useful genes in the hobby. Makes some amazing combinations. You can quickly make some incredible combination morphs just by combining it with other cheap genes. And like I say, the phrase to remember is you can't have too much yellow belly. So I hope this has been a fun video for you. You've got to have a look at some of my snakes and, you know, creep on some other breeders and look at their snakes, which is what I do all the time. That's where I get a lot of my inspiration, is from watching other people. So it's good to admit it. But if you do have any more questions or comments or questions about your breeding plans, do please get in touch and ask me. And as always, please do like and subscribe. Thank you.